right, Aaron. Is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast in Flagstaff. Yeah.
Okay, Flagstaff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done, over the course of the career, we've done some radio interviews and some things that kind of are like this. But I will say, this is nice. This is the nicest podcast I've ever been on.
Well, we're excited about it. We're excited to have you out. And so everyone join us here. Aaron Mayville is the, I'm going to say this right here. I'll just read off the card here. Well, is the forest supervisor for the Coconino National Forest.
That's right. You got it.
And that's where, as we were talking here too, that it's not Coconino County, because the Coconino Forest. Let's talk about then the forest.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good place to start.
You were, and I've been here 14 years. You've been here
6 months.
6 months.
Mm-hmm. Ask me anything.
And yeah, exactly. We're gonna dig into it. And so I should know this, but it's literally your job to know this.
Yeah, sure.
And so the Coconino Forest. Except I know someone could jump on Google here, but it's that you were saying that the west line is somewhere between about Williams and Flagstaff.
Yep.
And the southern line is just below.
So it goes all the way. Yeah. So it's 1.8 million acres. All right. So it's a big piece of ground.
Yeah.
It's headquartered in Flagstaff. That's where my office is, and the forest headquarters.
Yeah.
It extends north, all the way north of the San Francisco Peaks.
Okay.
So that kind of area all the way up. And then to the south goes all the way to the Mogollon Rim, and then off the rim into Sedona, that whole valley down there. The southern terminus is in the Fossil Creek area.
Okay.
Kind of goes down there, and then kind of everything in between. Yeah.
Okay.
And distinctive, it's confusing. Coconino County, Coconino National Forest, obviously the same word, named after similar history and such. But the Coconino County, I learned, is the second largest county by acreage in the country.
Really?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it goes all the way to the Utah border. It's like it's really
massive.
Big. The entirety of the Coconino National Forest, the majority of it is in Coconino County, and then the southern end is in Yavapai County. Yeah. So we and then there's a couple other little pieces and chunks, but that's the main kind of thrust of the acreage.
Yeah. Does that now? You came from which district? Because you just have been here.
Recently?
Yes, recently.
So I came from Colorado most recently.
Okay.
I was on the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forest and Pawnee National Grasslands. It was a long name tag.
Yeah, that is a big name tag.
And that's out of Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay, gotcha. And was that intimidating? Kind of like is
coming here?
Do we have a reputation? Do we have a rap?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What are the things that when you look at the forest supervisor role here, and based on your experience? Because I know now we also I knew you grew up a little bit in Utah, right?
I lived as a child. I lived in Utah.
Okay. Where have you worked?
Yeah, so with the Forest Service, I started in DC.
Okay. Which
is actually kind of rare to start there.
Yeah.
Most Forest Service employees start on the ground and kind of
work
to that. I kind of started there and then came back the other way.
Didn't like you?
No, I didn't like it. No,
I gotcha.
No, good.
Fair enough.
Good work and learned a lot.
Yeah.
But I was in the budget office there.
Okay.
Like we're not gonna put people to sleep. I'll make it fun. I promise.
Yeah.
But no, I was the agency's budget hearing coordinator.
Okay.
So every year, the chief of the Forest Service, like the big dog in DC, he at the time he testifies at Congress every spring.
Yep.
And defends the budget.
Okay.
So like you'll see it on C-SPAN and like he's sitting there at a hearing answering questions.
Yep.
And my job was to prepare him to do that. So we do mock hearings and like pass questions back and forth. And then I would sit behind him at the hearings and pass him notes. And that's my joke. I said that's why I look famous.
Yeah.
So I've been on C-SPAN. That's why I look familiar to you.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was real inch deep, mile wide Forest Service stuff.
Sure.
From there, I went to Bozeman, Montana. I've worked in Vail, Colorado. I worked in Fort Collins, Colorado, and then here. And I'll say, notably for this, in 2018, I came down for a temporary assignment here.
Okay.
4 months.
Okay, yeah.
And I was the acting deputy forest supervisor, so I was filling in for the number 2.
Okay.
And that's when I fell in love with the place.
Yeah.
And for the last 5 years, kind of trying to angle my way back, and it worked.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what are the draws and what are the challenges of like taking on that role?
Yeah. That's a lot in that question. So I'll answer it by kind of getting to the first thing you said, the reputation, right?
Yeah.
The Coconino National Forest is the 5th most visited national forest in the country. And that number across the country accounts for ski area visits as well.
Oh, okay.
So if you kind of adjust for that, this forest may even be higher.
Okay.
That's notable because there's just a lot of people here. Right?
Yeah.
And they want to come. And there's pros and cons to that. The cons are it's a lot of people to manage.
Yeah.
And everything that comes with that. The pros are people come here because it's awesome and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's great. And a lot of pride around managing something that's so popular that people enjoy. And I knew that coming here, that was going to be a big challenge among others.
Sure. And from visitation, what drives that then? So in looking at, because we're not talking Grand Canyon here. No, that's outside.
It's purely us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's where, so you said it does include ski area visits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Snowball obviously is a massive draw.
400,000 visitors, this skier visits this last winter, which is a record for them.
Okay. 400,000.
But the forest sees 5.5 million. So Snowball is actually a relatively small component. It's the largest single destination on the forest.
And so when you say then, so
5.5 million people.
5.5. So 5.1 outside of then ski area. And that is, how do they measure that? Is that like people buying like parking passes? Is that?
It's all of the above. So every 5 years, every national forest gets a survey done where they measure the visitation.
Yeah.
And they do it through like people smarter than I am doing this incredible statistical proxy stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So it includes, parking passes, includes skier visits, it includes
campsite reservations,
all of that. And then they take that and then extrapolate it with fancy math.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a counter at every single place.
Sure.
So it's proxy data, but it's proved to be pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And it's the same methodology at every national forest across the country.
And how much does like Sedona, because we're
by
saying
far the most visited place district on this forest.
Yeah.
We think about 3 to 3.5 of that 5.5 is just in the Sedona district alone. The Red Rock Ranger District is what it's called.
Okay. Well, and you're saying there's 3 ranger districts?
Yep. Yeah. One out of Flagstaff called the Flagstaff Ranger District.
Okay.
And it's it extends basically around the San Francisco Peaks and essentially like just south of Mormon Lake.
Okay.
The Red Rock Ranger District, which is headquartered in Village of Oak Creek. We have our office there at the visitor center.
Yep.
And that's more or less that whole valley.
Yeah.
And then we have the Mogollon Rim Ranger District. The office is at a Happy Jack.
Okay.
Which is kind of a town, but not really a town.
Sure.
More of a experience.
And then the Mogollon Rim. So to the east, what? I should know all this. What forest? It's like heading into, because you said just about Fossil Creek. So like Payson's a different.
Yes. So Payson is the Tonto National Forest. That's the one out of Phoenix.
Yep.
Directly to our east is the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest.
Yes.
And they're headquartered out of Springerville.
Okay.
And the boundary is just, is out there in between. And all the national forests in the area share boundaries and, we share management and do a lot of things together.
And is that, so in all these different places that you've worked, is it pretty unique to have, that's where a lot of people love, I'm great, by the way, of like compounding my questions. But
that's great.
Like a lot of people have such a high level of, I guess it comes hand in hand. I'm saying is like, we have this unique biodiversity, right? It is pretty unique to have what we have within just, an hour radius, much less, because what's the, I guess is the crow flies or something, or is it like you're probably within, like what is that? Probably like a 4-hour drive radius potentially
on the forest. Yeah. Probably about that. Maybe even a little less, 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so within that 3 to 4 hour drive, all these different, from like, we're talking about like hiking Cathedral Rock or hiking San Francisco Peaks. We're literally like, strapping on the split board and going up the ski hill, and then next day we're mountain biking on Red Rock.
Same day.
Or even same. Yeah, exactly. I would just
this is part of the reputation of this place, and again, what drew me here and what draws a lot of folks is what you're describing. So yes, everything that Sedona and the Red Rock country and all of that has to offer. The water. That district actually it's home to the only 2 wild and scenic rivers in the state of Arizona, which is pretty special.
Yeah.
And hence the draw, when it's hot in Phoenix, they come to the water.
Sure.
All the way up to the highest peak in the state of Arizona with Mount Humphreys and the San Francisco Peaks and everything in between. So yes, the variety of landscapes here is really special.
Yeah. So in the other places you worked at, like having to manage all those types of potential visitation purposes in one go is anywhere come near to it?
Not this kind of variety. No. So I've worked in Montana and out of Bozeman, Montana, which was great, but largely, the Rockies and the Rocky Mountain front. In Vail, it was the high country of Colorado, and some variety there too. We had some sagebrush country on the east side of the district or west side of the district, but it was mostly high alpine lakes and 14,000 foot peaks and everything like that. And the Front Range of Colorado, it was pretty diverse. We had I managed a grassland. I mentioned in the title the Pawnee National Grasslands. Yeah, and that's a very unique. That's just what you think it is in eastern Colorado. It's just grazing land and some other things in addition to some of that high alpine Rocky Mountain stuff. But what I'm loving about the Coconino and what again drew me here is this ponderosa pine forest, and everything that comes with it, the peaks and the basalt and volcanic history of it. Oh yeah, it just makes such a unique part of the country and the world. In addition, of course, to the human history here. Sure, the Southwest is just it just gets in you. At least it got in my wife and I before we moved here. Just a lot to love. Oh, exactly. Have you been to the lava tubes yet? Yes, I have. We went in 2018. I haven't been back since I've been back, but just exactly like where do you find stuff like that? Just out for the public to enjoy. Exactly. Yeah. And now, how much of it do you? Now, there's this element to where, and we had talked before about sharing kind of a mutual upbringing in Utah and the skiing there and snowboarding there. And so I, at one point thought I was like, like all young people that decide, professional athletes for them. Like I thought I could become a professional snowboarder. And I realized that at some point, even that becomes a job. Yeah. Right. Of like, it kind of can lose some magic. Does that happen in your job at all? So here's the way I've described it. It's a good question. And I've gotten it before. The first time you ever go out and do trail maintenance. Yeah. Right? Whether you're either maintaining a trail or building a trail, you will never look at a piece of trail the same ever again. Right? You appreciate what goes into building it, managing it, et cetera. And so that does happen with most all aspects of this job, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm a mountain biker, I'm a hiker, I fly fish, I do all the things outside. And, after being in this job now for Forest Service for about 12 years, I don't look at it the same. Yeah. But the beauty of it is that's what I like to do. It's what feeds the soul.
Can you enjoy that? Like you're ripping down, not Schultz is not fun to rip down because it's too busy, but you're ripping down Fort Valley or something and you're like, we need to maintain this berm a little bit, and you get off and no? No. So here's can you separate those two?
Here's this. I can't. The joke here is my wife and I'll go hiking. Yeah. Mostly if we go like traveling and we're on another national forest or some other trail or something, and we'll come up across like a trail bridge. Yeah. And I can't stop. I can't not look at her and be like, you have any idea how much this bridge costs? I mean, this is a significant investment. This is like a $400,000 bridge. And my wife will be like, yeah, you're ruining the mood. Yeah. So anyway, the other story was I was mountain biking down Sedona. I was in Western Gateway, I think it's called. Okay. I'm still learning names. Okay, yeah. And I was riding, and I was riding downhill. Uphill has the right of way. Yeah. That's a public service announcement for people listening. Yep. And so I pull off the trail. I just step off the trail. But as I do so, I kicked a rock and it rolled down, stopped right in the middle of the trail tread. Yeah. And so as they're coming up quick, I threw my bike down and I put the rock back, a little trail maintenance. And as they were riding by, they said, "Thank you for maintaining our trails," or something. So they had no idea who I was or what I did for work. Yeah. I can't not. Yeah.
I do appreciate the, I do know that there is, I should probably not even say this. I do know that there is trail etiquette and it is real. Yeah. Right? You look at that little triangle of horses, people, bikes, and everything. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, is it appropriate? Like you've earned that uphill. If the pedestrian like just says, "Hey, man, get your shred on," right? That it's okay.
Yes. Look, man, there's no trail police.
You obviously don't want to run into people.
It's meant to. I mean, you know why it's there. Of course, it's just about mobility and such. But oftentimes if the person hiking just courteously gets out of the way, I mean, thank them for it.
Yeah.
But the uphill, downhill, that's a good one for people to understand,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I found other bikers have no qualms saying like, I am coming down.
Right.
Like, totally. I know it's like, no, I'm climbing. Like, it's harder for me as I not step off, buddy.
I know. Well, sometimes I'm gassed, I'm like, I'll take the break.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm very quick to be like, no, like I will get off. Like, please enjoy this. And I hope that someone pays it forward to me because I wanted to come off that drop after I pedaled, up that one. Which kind of leads into this is, we'll rank this among the most difficult parts of your job is, I would guess. Okay, let me guess here if we can make this fun. So one of the most difficult parts of your job is probably, if I had to say top 3, I'm going to say 1 is, so I'm not going to rank these in most important, but let's see if I can get even on the board here.
Okay.
Of just like we talked about, the wide geographic range of what you have going on all the time in managing all the people, activities, needs of just this massive diverse area is probably 1, I guess. Number 2, I would say is the threats, right? And the threats being like you mentioned, we'll see if we have a fire today, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's probably one of the most difficult. And then reacting to those threats adequately. And then the third, and this I might put one, even though I said it last, I might put this as one of the top, or like the top, is, and you'll tell me how wrong I am on all of these, but all the different interests that go into the use of our lands and trying to say who can do what and why or why not.
Yeah. Not bad.
Not bad. Am I pretty close?
Yeah. No one's ever couched it this way.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd add, because we can get in all these, resources.
Okay. Yeah.
It's sometimes a fun, sometimes a depressing thought experiment to think about if I had what I really needed to do everything I want to do, or that we, are charged with doing, what it would really look like and what it would take.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Because we just don't, hiring's a challenge and funding's a challenge, but the reason it's a challenge is all the things that you've talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazingly, we, the different uses across the national forest.
Yeah.
So the way we describe it is the whole reason I have a job, right, is the gray.
Yeah.
And the fact that it doesn't say it in policy or some law somewhere.
Sure.
Because if you could write it all down and be like, you can mountain bike here and you can cut trees over here and fire will only go here, and it was all like in a policy, we wouldn't have a job. It'd be pretty easy. But those things don't always play nice together. Yeah. And that's the job. Yeah, it's human conflict, human and environmental conflict, and how those things come together.
Yeah.
Wildfire's the other one. I mean, you mentioned it, of course. That's just, we spend a appropriate amount of our time, preparing for and dealing with that.
Yeah.
But it can be, and it's been growing. It can be so unwieldy and big.
Yeah.
And it's getting more unwieldy and larger as the years go on. And there's reasons for that we can get into. And so the unpredictability of that can really be a challenge, and the scariness of it, and the impact to our communities and such.
Sure.
So there's a kind of an existential challenge there with just about how it feels every time I hear thunder. You go, oh, that meant lightning struck somewhere.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're gonna have a start? So
because how many? I know we're oblivious to a lot of, I was seeing, last weekend, I was just seeing a little, I was out on Lake Mary and seeing a little puff of smoke towards town. And so how many lightning strikes have we had in town that they've put out?
So I don't know the number, but I'll say, a storm cell could come over and drop 75 lightning strikes in one cell. Yeah. It could be one, and anywhere in between. Depending on the conditions, if it's wet lightning, right? If it's raining with it, it may not do anything. Okay. If it's dry lightning, all 70 of those could be potential starts that we're chasing. Okay. Chasing around. So like last weekend, thankfully we're getting moisture with these storms right now.
Yes.
And so, but I mean, my phone blows up, every single time fire folks, my folks respond, we're alerted to it. And it's multiple a day. On the weekends, it's dozens.
Oh, okay.
It's in that number.
So, and to our knowledge, we haven't had any human-caused issues, or have we?
Oh no, we've had this year we've had plenty of human starts. Yeah,
People aren't listening to what's the bear's name again?
Smokey.
Yeah,
Smokey.
I was gonna say Yogi, but that's a different one.
Yeah. Well, and we're under fire restrictions right now.
Yeah.
But human start doesn't necessarily mean a violation, like they've got a fire, an illegal fire. Yeah. It could be flick cigarette butt littering. It could be an accident. It could be a muffler backfiring. It could be all kinds of different things. Human start just means not natural, of course. Yeah. But no, we get all kinds all the time, and frankly, it's one of the things relatively new here still, but that I'm still getting used to on this forest. This is a high fire activity national forest, and they're known for it. Want to talk reputation? It's an incredible workforce that does really good work.
Wow.
Around fire suppression.
Yeah.
And prevention.
Yeah. And it's that's just hard too, because a lot of probably what you guys feel like you do is pretty common sense, right?
The day to day, right, is yes. They're responding to fires. They're putting them out. We're talking to people and educating them about national forest and what that is and what that isn't. And, I got a question once in Colorado, not Arizona, but in Colorado. No kidding. At what elevation do the deer turn to moose?
Were they from America?
Yeah, they're from the U.S. And I thought it was a joke. They're like, no, I thought that it was an elevational thing, that at one elevation they're deer, and then they turn to moose. You go, oh my Lord. So
yeah. Is that a Darwin thing?
Yeah. People are going to people, they say.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting too, is the common sense of it, of when people are recreating, and and I think that's, I'm sure I should have read like the mission statement or something, because that's probably part of the mission statement of like having people be able to enjoy the lands that are available to them in safe and respectful and environmentally respectful ways. Mm-hmm. But I find it so funny to me. Like I was going to start this camp. I'll bring some of my personal agenda into this conversation.
Yeah, sure.
With all the water we received, I was like, we need to start a campaign of like canoes and paddle boards on Lower Lake Mary. Right? I was in the powerboat class or interest group on that one, where I'm like, all right, like, I love your ability to go wherever you want on this lake, but if there's enough boats on this lake and you want to exercise your right to be in the smack dab middle of the lake on your paddleboard, like it's not maybe the safest area of the lake to be. Like I'm not drinking and coherent and out here on the water, and there's not a lot of supervision out on that lake.
No, not day to day.
Yeah, not day to day, to where, I don't know, some people take their life in their own hands. So I don't know. It wages interesting questions on people having that common sense, exercising
so I'd say
their rights within not violating others' rights.
Two thoughts come to mind. Like the first is, one of the other reasons we have jobs is management, right? And conflict management. And so like, if there's a piece of national forest out there that gets some hiking, gets some biking, gets some hunting, whatever, but they're not fundamentally in conflict, because it's not overly popular or something, no big deal.
Great.
But the second it starts to, those user conflicts start to grow, that's when we do step in. And that's when permit systems come into play, and capacity studies and day use sites and user, and so we try not to do that by default.
Yeah.
But we will step in and do it if we have to.
Well, and it's been interesting, even just the 14 years I've been here, of seeing things shift like that. And it's kind of sad, like, to see things shift, but you understand, like Fossil Creek, for instance, like you used to be able to camp. We'd take Boy Scouts down there all the time. Yeah. Camp right there, just north of King Kong's toilet bowl, and loved that area. But in the same vein, like we'd get down there and there'd be like, and certain summer days or summer weekends, there'd be like half a dozen plus or a dozen like scout troops, and you'd be like, it was like toilet paper soiled like hills where you're like, okay, this is just not working.
So the secret's out. You call it loving it to death. So that's what precipitated the permit system and trying to manage it more. And the fundamental philosophy there is twofold. One is you got to take care of the place.
Yeah.
If humans will overrun a place, and then we will love it to death, and it's no longer there for everyone's enjoyment. So you got to step in. And then two, everyone deserves to be able to visit it.
Sure.
This is public land. And I'd love to talk as much or as little about that as possible as you'd like, because it's important to me. But we manage these lands for the public, capital P. Everybody from New Jersey, from Phoenix, from Flagstaff is welcome and able to enjoy these places. And this is where, to get back to this idea of common sense. What's common sense to someone who's lived in Flagstaff for 14 years, and is comfortable with the mountain life, is different for someone from Los Angeles or Phoenix.
Or someone who's Phoenix who has baked their brains for their life.
That could be why.
It's funny that you do. You haven't been here long enough, but there's this like subtle prejudice that it's funny. My sister's down in Gilbert, and she'll come up here and she's like, "You guys really don't like us here, do you?" It's like, we love your monetary contribution to the economic.
Can you just send it in the mail?
But then you guys don't always do things. I mean, you see, and again, this is not a broad brush stroke, but you see things of like, if anyone, and Google this, folks, like of the sleds, right? You've seen the pictures of like all of a sudden you came up, you bought gloves and sleds at the gas station for one-time use only, and left them all in our forest. And it's like, you treated us like the rental car. There's
definitely some common sense that comes into play. I'm not discounting it.
Sure.
I'm also just saying that, like, you got to start somewhere. You know, you got to start somewhere as to understanding how to appropriately recreate, trail etiquette. Like, how do these things work?
Sure.
And so that's the, admittedly, silver lining, glass half full side of it, though, is that I've always worked on the 5 national forests, and all 5 of them have been highly recreated, basically top 10 forests where people go. And it's a point of pride for me. And I see that as, hey, it's our role to educate people as best we can, to try to manage them and people and the various uses. And then also a point of pride, like, hey, I get to manage a place that people love and they want to come. Now, do I wish that they would throw their sleds away and, and pack in, pack out? And absolutely. It would make my job easier, but we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We'll get there.
Now I discourage the tourism.
And you said it too. I mean, I've also been fortunate with what comes with those highly visited places, comes living in tourist places that attract a lot of tourists. And there's, in every place I've been, and I, as you said, age 7 to 14, I grew up in Park City, Utah. Yeah. And that's where I kind of started this. There's a love-hate between locals and tourists. There always has been. I've been around it my entire life almost. They provide an incredible economic benefit, livelihoods for many people here, but they can also bring challenges in how they interact,
Exactly. And with that being said, like, I'm curious to know as you feel free to disclose, what are maybe, so you mentioned that the conflict arises when we have a lot of interest groups that are highly interested in certain areas.
Sure.
Right. What are some of the bigger flashpoints of conflict in the Coconino Forest?
Yeah. Well, 3 come to mind. Okay. The first is we're dealing right now a lot with OHV use down on the Red Rock Ranger District.
Okay.
And so for a lot of reasons, OHVs are very popular. So this is, side by sides and you can rent.
Even motorcycles. You can't do even a lot of motorcycle riding down there.
And motorcycle riding. Yeah. Well, so on the Coconino, on that district anyway, they're open public roads. Yeah. So, in the state of Arizona, there's no restriction on utilizing an ATV or UTV on open public roads.
Sure.
So what's been born out of that is rental companies in town, a fair bit of private use too, but it's kind of unmanaged. That's the wrong word. It's managed. It's just use has grown. Okay. And so what comes with that is a lot more noise, a lot more dust, and a lot just more conflicts between hikers, between residents.
Yeah.
On that district in particular, a lot of the trailheads are accessed through neighborhoods.
Yeah, so like Broken
Arrow is a good example of that, right? And so we've got a challenge in front of us here, right? Because you've got legal, viable businesses providing a service to people.
Yeah.
And that service is being done legally on open public roads.
Yep.
And it's causing a lot of user conflicts and conflict. So we've got a collaborative group we've pulled together. with industry, with other government, with residents, to try to kind of solve this. So what do we want to do? Do we put in some restrictions, do a permit system, a capacity, build new trails, open it up, change things. Yeah. And that's been a challenge because it's immediate, but it's going to take some time to really think through that one. So that's the first that comes to mind. Yeah.
Well, and it's just like anything you're talking about, and I appreciate that you already said that is permit's the last thing you want to do, but you can see the purpose for it. Yeah. And I know, we love to, just on a jaunt, like go drive Broken Arrow with our own private vehicle. Right.
Sure.
And, although I don't take it down Devil's Staircase. I've ridden down Devil's Staircase. I'm a kind of a wuss on that. And it is a daily driver. So I don't know.
No judgment here. It's wild down there.
It's a little intense. So there's, And so, but then it's like, okay, where does that then restrict all these different uses? And I guess that's what just gets really tricky.
The way we describe it is we call it squeezing the balloon. Yeah. So, if you do a restriction over here, that could be a permit. It could be a gate closure. It could be any kind of restriction. The balloon's going to pop out over there. Yeah. And so we try our best to really understand where the downstream effects are going to happen when you do something like that. So it may wind up in a permit system of some sort, but we need to understand totally what that means. Does that mean that if you restrict it at Broken Arrow, it's just going to pop back over in West Sedona, or vice versa, or what?
Well, and it sounds like you guys do it. I understand that it's obviously very difficult, and that oftentimes, and it's almost like a parent, right? Is I have to know what is the greater good, not just who's the loudest kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Very well said.
And that's in knowing that you are in your role, you are inherently going to have some dissatisfied customers.
Yes.
Because if everyone just said, I'm the loudest one, this is what I want to see happen, do it for me, and they are ignorant of the secondary and tertiary impacts or where that ball is going to squeeze, then it's like, that's right. It's a tough gig.
And that's the job. That's the Forest Service's position here is we're often, not always, but often in the middle of trying to balance those interests and trying our best to find the best win-win or the best balance of things.
Sure.
You mentioned the mission of the Forest Service earlier. Yeah. It's to sustain the health, productivity, and diversity of the nation's forests and grasslands for the benefit of present and future generations. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, I'm glad that you have that memorized, though.
Yeah. Well, it's the job.
Exactly.
And that's just it. Sustain is the word, to sustain it. If you'll allow me.
Yeah, please.
This is kind of fun. Yeah. I think my mom still thinks I take tickets at a campground. What is the Forest Service? I had the title of district ranger for a while. Yeah. Whenever that word ranger's in there, people think I work for the Park Service.
Sure.
And there's this kind of, I think, interesting history between the Forest Service and the Park Service and how they were both born. Yeah. You've heard of John Muir?
Yes.
Does the name ring a bell?
What is it? The mountains are calling. I must go.
That's John. Yeah, that's Mr. Muir. You ever heard of a guy named Gifford Pinchot?
Not Gifford.
Yep. Nope. So he's less known. Okay. But these two gentlemen in the late 1800s, early 1900s, personified a national debate around public land and what this country should be doing with it. So in the late 1800s, the forest reserves were created. The federal government, with a stroke of a pen, just kind of locked up a bunch of land out west. They said, look, we're slicking off too many trees. Water quality is becoming an issue. We're going to lock it all up, and then we'll figure out what we want to do with it. So these two guys came together and led two different dialogues around public land. One is called conservationism, and the other is called preservationism. Okay. Preservationism is essentially, my words, but you draw a line around it and you preserve it. You say, this is beautiful, this is interesting, something. We want to keep it that way. We want to preserve it.
Exactly how it is.
Yep, how it is. And that's the Park Service. That's John Muir. That was the model that was born out of preservationism. Yep. And that's the Park Service. They have amazing, parts of this country that they want to preserve so for people to enjoy. The idea of conservationism, and this is the Gifford Pinchot camp, is to sustain this land, keep it sustainable, but to use it. Yeah. And that's why on and that became the National Forest System. Yeah. And that's why on national forests you can log, there's grazing, there's much more recreation use, there's just a lot more things that happen. Sure. and that don't happen in the national parks.
Yep.
So we have we appreciate one another, our different agencies.
Oh, sure.
But it's a different fundamental mission, and so as a result, the conflicts we're kind of talking about, OHV use. There's no OHV use in the Grand Canyon.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's just not part of their mission.
It's not a conversation.
Yep. And so because of the more broad mission and, different interests on national forests, it means we got, some challenges ahead of us too.
Yeah. Anyway. So let's wrap the other three. So, and I love that. That just helps illustrate just from the big picture concept so easily.
Yeah.
But you said there was two other areas. So that
the snowball is like
constant.
That's the other one. And I mentioned I was down here in 2018, and I really did my homework before I came down here and applied for the job permanently, and learned about the history, recent and long-standing history of the snowball, the Arizona, the peaks, and just everything there. So if you want to talk about big challenges, that's certainly one of them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's no winning that one. There's no like win-win scenario with the Arizona snowball and just the peaks and the sacred site and everything that comes with it. Well, but I do think there's ways to help manage it and to,
sure,
be respectful of all the various uses up there.
It's funny because there's levels to that, and I don't want to make light of, and I don't fully understand, not nearly what you do, of then the sacred site aspect of it, and others' religious connections to it. So I don't want to make light of that when I say this too, but then you also have the locals, how they see that ski mountain, right? Sure. And much less than the folks in Phoenix that want to come up and enjoy their public lands, right?
That's right.
And so there's different degrees on that. And so I know that the snowmaking was a huge conflict, and what you can speak of, is there just more developmental plans that that are bringing conflict between all the interested parties?
Well, there's always proposals out there. There's a lot of things a lot of different people would like to do. And the snowmaking and that decision was one that certainly set us on a course.
Yeah.
It was obviously before my time here.
Yep.
And it's been built and it's there.
Yep.
And I'll say, I think the fundamental issue there is much deeper. It certainly is for our tribal partners. And,
sure.
And I don't, I want to just acknowledge that, it's my opinion on this and my observation of it. So our tribal partners have a much deeper and more personal way to describe what I will try to bumble my way through,
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's almost like this is my observation. It's almost like the English language doesn't fully like capture when we just say sacred site.
Yeah.
It is that to us, English speaking language, sure. But like it's far deeper than that in my meetings with tribal members and folks who feel really strongly around the San Francisco Peaks. It is their creation. It is their God being. It is central to their like knowing of the world.
Oh, wow.
It's really deep.
Yeah.
And so because of that, any blemish on that, any incursion or development, taints it and tarnishes that. And so it's been interesting talking with folks. I've heard things like not even seeing it. You can't, maybe from one angle, you don't see the ski area. You don't see the mountain biking. You don't see the communications towers and all the things in that sacred area.
Yeah.
But just knowing it's there hurts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the snowmaking decision exacerbated that feeling that was kind of already there.
Yeah.
The flip side of this too is, a decision that was made long before you and I were here in the 1930s to build a ski area on the side of that mountain.
Yeah.
It was a legitimate legal decision as well. They have a permit to operate and they're a viable legal business.
Absolutely.
And so we have like a clash and a conflict of like ideals. Yeah. Like, and not just policies and opinions. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I know that gets so big,
that one's,
that's fundamentally what's, I think, at the heart of this challenge.
Yeah. What was that third area?
Oh, the third challenge?
Yeah.
What we're calling our wildfire crisis.
I gotcha.
Yeah. And that's more broadly to the Western United States, but really felt here with fire and our susceptibility across the West, climate change, all of that. It's a big challenge ahead of all of us.
Yeah. And so knock on wood, this this summer feels better than last summer.
Yeah, so far.
Certainly, so far so good.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, is it mostly like just the climate change, the issues that we're seeing that the threat is like as we're measuring it, that the threat to or of catastrophic fire. Here's how
I kind of describe it. If you think of a Venn diagram, right, with three circles. Remember that?
Yep. Oh, I draw Venn diagrams with Cole all the time.
So with three circles, right, and we find ourselves square in the middle.
Yeah.
And these are like the three kind of things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
One circle is what we call fuels in the woods. Okay. There's more trees out there. There's more stuff to burn.
Yeah. Okay.
And that is directly a result of, you mentioned Smokey Bear earlier.
Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires, and the Forest Service and all firefighting over the years, we've been really good at putting fires out.
Yeah. So things that would have been burning in that natural course of things hasn't. Well, and that's I think through all of and just working to educate myself and these conversations through the years and seeing forests is like the pictures, right? Of like here's a picture where it's like there's here's several acres and there's a tree here, a tree there, and now it's like it's the forest is far more dense.
Yes. And that is true across the entire country, really, but especially the West. Is that we've been, because of human interests and human values, we've been putting fires out, and we got really good at it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
we're saving Bambi.
Yeah, it's a point of pride in a way, but what that did is that created unnatural forest conditions. Is what you're describing, and we got a lot of fuels out there. That's circle number one. Circle number two, we have a lot more people and stuff in the woods as well. So take the community of Flagstaff. There's more development. There's more homes. There's power lines. There's just more stuff than there ever has been, ever.
Yep.
And that's not something the Forest Service has much of a jurisdiction over necessarily.
Yeah.
That's just development and human growth.
Yeah.
And then there's the third circle, and that's climate change. And people can debate why it's happening. It kind of doesn't matter in my line of work. It is happening. Fires and fire seasons are burning longer, hotter, more expensive. I mean, the numbers bore this out over the last 20 years. It's every year almost we're setting records.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so all three of these things combined, we find ourselves smack in the middle. And what the Forest Service has deemed what they call the wildfire crisis across the West is to try to do something about it. And what we're trying to do is reduce some of those fuels. And that's the circle that the Forest Service can really try to affect.
Yeah.
And maybe with some smarter building policies and Firewise, things across communities, we can affect that second circle. That third circle, we can do our part, right? But this is, climate change is much bigger than an individual.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd say that's the third kind of challenge ahead of us. We're up for it, and we're doing good work through prescribed fire, like good fire.
Yep.
And we had a great year this year.
Yeah.
With purposely putting fire on the ground and reducing some of the fuels, the grasses, the things out there that can burn when a wildfire does start.
Definitely. Yeah. So. And sounds like you got your hands full.
It's not a small job, man.
I know.
We start out going 1.8 million acres, and oh my God, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And the acreage is almost secondary to like what happens within it.
Well, the bigger number than that is the 5.5 people, or a million people around in that 1.8.
Yeah, there's a lot of people milling around. So that's just it. It's this great double-edged sword. The visitation and the use of the attention, that comes with a forest of this magnitude, brings a lot of challenges, a lot of pressures. But again, it's I relish it.
Yeah,
I'm here on purpose.
Oh, exactly. And it seems like you're a very well balanced individual on it, very level headed. But if I can, on some closing remarks here, are there any like pet peeves that you have that you just like from however large our platform is here to be like, hey, here's a couple of tips next time you're going here. Don't do this or that, or what? Do you have some?
This is great. These are some questions I don't normally get. So right on. So the first thing, I guess,
have I not asked any questions that I should have asked?
Or
Or is this more of the off the cuff?
No, yeah, this is just off the cuff. This is great. No, these are fun for this reason. Yeah. Tips. I'd say, look, it's the slogan is called "Know before you go."
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
And again, residents of
Ignorance
a community
is
like
death is another statement, right?
Yeah, I've heard that too. Residents of a community like Flagstaff generally have a pretty good trail etiquette and natural acumen in the woods, and generally, not everybody, but generally. But folks from elsewhere don't, and it's all of our jobs to help educate. This idea of knowing before you go is good. That's not just don't litter. Or trail etiquette. It's like, is there a permit system? What are the best times to arrive to a place? Like, what are the rules in place? Is it a sacred site? And I should be respectful of that. Yeah. What does that mean? This forest, the Coconino National Forest, has more archaeological sites and historic sites per acre than any national forest in the country.
We're so special in so many ways.
Yeah, it's superlative, man.
Yeah.
And that it speaks to, a lot of people have wanted to be here for a long time. Yeah. And our Native American history here is so rich and so incredible to be a part of. So, I don't know. So that's less a pet peeve and more just like some advice on that. The other thing is, we do manage these lands, public lands, for everyone. Yeah. And it's a real point of pride for me, and I know the staff that I get to work with feel the same. Like, it's cool. Yeah. And it's a uniquely American idea. It never existed in the history of the world. Yeah. Before this, Crown land in England,
even British imperialism.
That's called Crown land. Yeah. But it belonged to the king. Yeah. And it wasn't everyone's. This idea that these belong to everyone.
But that we're gonna collectively manage it.
But then we have to collectively manage it. And so having an understanding and I think a respect for that. A pet peeve is when people don't maybe fully appreciate that, or they start to take ownership of this and think that it's their right to theirs alone. Yeah. So in principle, man, it's for everybody and for everybody to enjoy.
Exactly.
Which is pretty cool, I think.
I love and there are, as much as I have, we all have our little annoyances here or there, or our interests at heart, because we are selfish beings to some extent. Of that is one of my favorite things about this forest, and about living in Flagstaff is you can have these magic moments that I always like to kind of say that we are what other places used to be, and we still have this I know a lot of people don't like a lot of the growth and development that's happening, and a lot of that's just, it is inevitable. It's a train that's moving that no one individually is at the helm of that, right? But that you can still have most people, because we're in the housing industry, most people, it's no, within 15 minutes of any house in Flagstaff, you have probably a pretty epic trail system, right? And epic recreation. And then you still have that magic of even on a Saturday, if I'm on a Saturday morning and I know the right trail, I'm not going to see a soul.
So what we say is just give it, this is part of knowing before you go. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You give it the little, hike that extra little mile. Yep. Right, wake up a little extra early. Yep. Right, do a little more research, and I'm not going to give away the secret spots that haven't, that aren't out there just yet. Exactly. But there's plenty of places you can still find. Oh, absolutely. And then the other part of this too, I'd say, having worked in the places I have, enjoying it with some other visitors is okay too. Oh, I know some people just want solitude and they want to be out there by themselves, and you can find that. But go down to the Red Rock District on a Saturday in the spring. Yeah. And a lot of people enjoying this place, man. And it's okay too. And
I will say, and this is, now we're letting you in on the ego trip on when you're mountain biking, down on Broken Arrow or something, and there's foreign tourists right there, and you can't hear what they're saying because it's in some different language, but they're looking at you the same way they look at a javelina coming through the forest. It's kind of fun. Sure, man. Right? There's kind of fun where you're there's this guy just dropping off of these rocks on this
you're and I live here.
Shiny full suspension mountain bike, and it's just it's fun. It's fun.
Look, it's isn't it cool? Yeah. We get to live here.
Exactly.
I mean, again, I'm relatively new to the area, but just thrilled to be here. We're just absolutely pinching myself that I get the opportunity. I haven't mentioned, and I'd like to, the staff that I have the privilege of getting to lead and manage. Yeah. I mean, these are world class. And there's great employees all over the Forest Service. There are great national forests all over the country, but there's something about this group that I'm really, really, really proud to be part of.
That's awesome.
And the same goes for the community of Flagstaff and Sedona and even Happy Jack, the community of Happy Jack. But, the people that have chosen to be in this part of the world are pretty cool.
Yeah. So. Well, a lot of people, because they love it. We're here for a lot of similar reasons.
Yeah.
We have our differences, but we're here for a lot of similar reasons.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love, Aaron, that we got you at 6 months in, so we'll definitely do a follow-up to
Sure.
see if you get burnt out in 12 months or something for now. But awesome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks very much for having me. This is pretty cool.